Hello and welcome to Legal Basics with Cyro Law Global, and my name is Sian. We're still on the electoral law series, and today we're going to look at coalitions and mergers and the new kid on the block, which is the coalition political party. Today, to look at this topic, we have a guest, and I will let him introduce himself.
Hello viewers, my name is James Tugay. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, a partner at Munyao Mudhama and Kashindi Advocates, and a fellow at the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators.
Karibu.
Asante.
So James, please explain to us the difference between a coalition, a merger, and now a coalition political party.
I think in simple terms, a coalition is the coming together of a number of parties under one umbrella, but without losing their identity. So the parties would then work together, but each would then retain its identity. And in a coalition, each party is able to field its own candidates. In a merger, the initial political parties that come together lose their identity, they get deregistered, and they join a new party, which then they become members of. And so there's no membership of political parties in a merger. It's just one political party. A coalition political party is also the coming together of political parties. The only difference between a coalition political party and a coalition is that a coalition political party is in itself also a political party, and it can also field candidates as a coalition political party. In a coalition, the candidates can only be fielded by the individual parties that join the coalition. In a coalition political party, both the individual parties as well as the coalition political party can field candidates.
Okay, well, I'm sure it sounds very technical for the viewer, so I think the best thing is to just look at the history of political parties in Kenya and elections, and just try to explain to the viewer what that was, from the times of KANU and KADU to 2002 elections, where we had NAC with different principles from different parties, to 2013, where we had a president and a deputy president from two different parties, but running under an umbrella called Jubilee. Then in 2017, when we had now a political party called Jubilee. And now currently, where we have the Kenya Kwanza and we have Azimio. So maybe we could just look at these formations historically and place them on this ladder, whether they're coalitions, whether they're mergers, and whether they are coalition political parties. Let's start with maybe KANU and KADU.
So KADU and KANU, just after the initial elections, after independence, merged. So KANU obviously had won the elections and KADU had come second. And they merged, and the new entity, if you would call it so, was still KANU. And later on, after the 97 elections, after the cooperation between NDP and KANU, there was another merger, again involving KANU, with the name still remaining KANU. So that was the merger between NDP and KANU at that point. In 2002, there was the coming together of a number of political parties. But just ahead of the 2002 general elections, there were no legal provisions for a coalition. So all these parties came together, even called themselves a coalition, because NAC in full would be National Alliance Rainbow Coalition, which was the coming together of the NAK, which was Ford Kenya, at that point SDP and DP, and the Rainbow Coalition, which was the splinter group that left KANU just when President Moi at that time decided to support Uhuru Kenyatta for president. And when they came together, they called themselves National Alliance Rainbow Coalition, but NAC at that point was actually a political party. And all the candidates that ran on NAC as a political party. What those who came together did not do is they did not deregister their parties. So obviously parties like Ford Kenya, SDP still exist to date, even though members of those parties joined NAC at that point. I think because of that coming together and they calling themselves a coalition, probably the legislature saw the need for provision for coalitions. And so in subsequent times, the law has changed to make provision for coalitions and to provide also now, most recently, for coalition political parties. For instance, after the 2010 constitution, you'd remember there was a coalition, there were two coalitions really that participated in the 2013 elections. So using the presidential elections as the example, then you'd have CORD, which consisted at that time of Wiper. I believe Wiper was still ODM Kenya at that point before they changed their name also to Wiper. And ODM itself and Ford Kenya as the main coalition partners at that point. And then you would have in 20, at the same time there was URP and TNA, the main political parties forming the Jubilee coalition. Perhaps then to use that to give the examples of a merger, you would then have URP and TNA merging to form Jubilee Party, which is now a political party. And to also use some of those parties as an example for a coalition political parties more recently, you've had ODM and a number of other parties, including now Jubilee Party, coming together under the Azimio political party.
Just from the way you explained, the main distinctive factor is whether a party is going to exist with its own identity before and after the coalition or the merger, right?
Yes.
Okay, so just to put it into perspective for the viewer, let's look at it historically. When KANU and KADU came together, what was that politically?
That was a merger, because then the new political party, if we could call it new, though it took the name of one of the two parties that were merging, was KANU, and KADU then ceased to exist as a political party. Whatever else they could have done would have been to merge and create a new name for the new political party. But at that point, they chose to go with the name of one of the parties that merged at that point. So that was a merger.
All right. So when two parties merge, they can either take a whole new name or they can take a name of one of the parties.
Probably in most instances now, present day, they would probably take up a new name.
Okay.
But historically, there have been those two mergers where parties merged with KANU and retained the name KANU as the name of the new party.
All right. So now let's come to the year 2002, where we saw principals from different parties that were considered strong politically coming together and forming the NAC party that eventually carried the day and gave us President Kibaki as the president. So what is NAC considered a coalition, a merger, or it was just a whole new party, and how did it work?
NAC at that point was registered as a political party. In fact, NAC still exists as a political party with Governor Charity Ngilu as the party leader. So NAC was a political party. All these individuals joined the political party. The main reason for that was that there was no legal framework at that point for coalitions. But the intention was to create a coalition. The nature of the MOU they entered into, for instance, was to share positions between what they would then have considered parties or groupings within the party. But the only kind of entity they could run on at that point was a political party.
Okay, so legally, if you were to follow the law today, NAC was not a coalition.
Yes.
It was just a political party with principals from different political parties leaving their parties and joining a new one.
Yes, and we could not call it a merger either, because those other parties did not cease to exist.
They are still existent
Yes.
to this date.
Yes.
Now let's come to 2013, where we had our current president and deputy president coming from two different parties. What would you call that outfit?
So that now is a coalition, and at that point, the law provided for coalitions. Part of what I think was the reasoning for allowing coalitions was all these requirements for, especially for the president to be elected, including the 50% plus one, and the fact that most political parties in Kenya are what I would call regional parties. They have strongholds in certain regions, and they are probably unable to get a candidate who would get to that threshold by himself. So parties then come together for the purpose of winning elections, obviously. And so at that point, TNA, which was party leader at that point, was the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and URP, whose party leader was the current deputy president, William Ruto, came together in a coalition that they called the Jubilee Coalition.
Okay. So viewers, if you can remember, During the 2013 elections, when you went to the ballot for the other positions aside from the presidency, you would find either TNA or URP. The candidates would not be under Jubilee.
Yes.
They would be under either of them. So that means it's a coalition. The parties still remain.
Yes.
Now let's come to the year 2017, where same principles from two different parties now formed a party.
Yes.
Yes.
So at some point, URP and TNA then decided to merge, and they merged into Jubilee Party, which also still exists to date. And so that's an example, that's a good example of a merger. Two parties that came together into a coalition and then subsequently decided to merge into one political party. And in this instance, the merger then came up with a new name. But that new name was already the name of a coalition they had created earlier. But obviously, Jubilee did not exist earlier as a political party, only as a coalition.
What does the law provide as regards the parties that have merged after forming these new political parties? What happens to them?
So the parties that decide to merge and form a new party, obviously with a different name, lose their identity completely. They are deregistered and they cease to exist as a political party. So for instance, there is no political party currently in Kenya called TNA, and there's no political party called URP.
We explained that the constitution of the political parties is one of the most critical documents at the point of registering a political party. Now, when a party wants to enter a coalition, what bearing does its constitution have on the coalition?
Obviously, the constitution of a party regulates how the party conducts itself and conducts its affairs. One of the things a political party may do is to join a coalition, but for that to be possible, then the constitution of the party should provide for that possibility. So the party should then have determined in its constitution that one of the things it can engage in is, coalition building, joining coalitions, and all such other things.
Right. I've also seen that because coalitions are based on having a common goal, the constitution of a party could allow for coalitions, but that specific goal that the coalition is for, the constitution of the party can be against it, right?
Yes.
And that would be part of the reason why it probably doesn't join that constitution.
Yes, so a party may choose not to join a coalition because they don't think the goals of that coalition align with their own goals as a party. You could find, for instance, parties are formed on different bases, and the philosophy of a party could be different. Some you could tell from the name of the party, like SDP calls itself Social Democratic Party, so they consider themselves social democrats. You would not expect such a party then to join a coalition where the entire philosophy is completely different from their own philosophy as a party. But obviously, the nature of our politics is most of it is shaped by other considerations as opposed to the philosophy of a party.
Especially numbers. I mean, numbers is number one.
So you might see such things happening, although you do not expect them to happen. But if you look at elsewhere, probably around the world, you'll see that parties tend to form coalitions based on their philosophy and ideology. And in the rest of the world, mostly coalitions then happen after elections to ensure that the party that has won the election is able to govern, because they probably don't have the numbers.
Right. What happens if either of the parties to a coalition breaches the agreement and one party feels aggrieved?
Obviously, a coalition is based on an agreement, and some of the provisions of that agreement would be, how to enforce the rights that every party has, how to walk away from the coalition if you are not happy. So parties generally have a number of options. When they feel one party is misbehaving, to put it that way, they could decide to leave the coalition. If the coalition agreement, then they would look at it to see how they can leave. There's normally a procedure and timelines for doing that. The other option would be to enforce the agreement. If the agreement requires a party to do something, or says a party may not do something and they're either doing that which they're not supposed to do, or doing something that is not allowed by their rules, then you can go and try to enforce the agreement. Or if they are failing to do something they're supposed to do. I remember within the NASA coalition, there were disagreements about distribution of political party funds, which were given to ODM because of its number of
Yes.
governors
Oh,
and
we remember
elected
the scandal.
officials.
Yeah.
And Ford Kenya and Wiper and ANC were very unhappy about the fact that ODM had not given them, what they thought was their rightful share of the funds. In fact, this was part of the many reasons that NASA coalition then finally failed as a coalition and was dissolved. There would be a chance to go to court and
Yes.
seek to enforce your rights. You can walk away. You can decide to stay and live with those inadequacies of your coalition partners. So,
All right. So now let's just move the spotlight from the party to the members, and specifically to the elected members. If I was a member to a party before election that was in a coalition, and then on year 2, year 3, the coalition has broken down, or my party is coming out of a coalition, what happens to me who's been elected on a ticket of a party that was part of a coalition?
well, nothing really happens to you because, when you are in a coalition, you run on your party ticket. So whether your party joins the coalition or leaves, you remain a member of that party, and that party remains in the books as a political party. So you would have been elected on that party ticket and you retain your seat.
So nothing changes?
Yes.
Now, would it be the same thing if it was a merger? So let's say I was a member of Jubilee Party, which had been a merger before 2017. And then somewhere on year 3, year 4, let's say the merger, I'm no longer happy with how things are running in this party, and yet I'm already elected under this ticket. What happens if I decide now to leave the merger?
So, when parties merge, they create a new political party, which is really just like any other political party. So, giving the example of Jubilee, Jubilee is a political party, and the consequences of leaving a political party in which you are elected is that you should lose your seat. Obviously, we know in Kenya what they would ordinarily do is they do not leave officially, but they would start associating with other parties.
They just start going to functions of the other side.
Yes, so there have been those questions, for instance, with regard to UDA members. And what happened is UDA as a political party happened to have been part of a coalition with Jubilee.
Yes.
Because Jubilee Party formed a coalition after creating a political party, which was a merger, then got into coalitions. So these members of Jubilee Party who were leaving to go into UDA, then would argue that they were associating with a member of a coalition.
They just moved to
so
another room
within
the same house.
So when they campaigned for a UDA candidate, they would say, we are campaigning for a coalition partner. But obviously, you remember what happened with the nominated members of Jubilee who were expelled by the party or suspended at different points. And one of the members, Honorable Isaac Mwaura, actually lost his seat for a while, but
yes.
Through the legal process, found his way back
into
Senate.
Reinstated.
Yes.
Well, I find that interesting because that is, if I join a merger before elections, so basically it means if I have to leave it along the way, then it means I'm leaving the political party and I should lose my seat.
Yes.
But what I find most interesting is that the law provides that if the merger happens after the election, then I can move parties and not lose my seat. Yes. How does this work?
In a merger, it's the political party then that is dissolving completely and joining another political party. And I think in the bigger scheme of things, there's probably a need to encourage mergers so that we have bigger political parties that have bigger support.
Sure, and a national face.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things that you could do then to enhance that is to let elected members retain their seats. Otherwise, they would never agree to get into a merger and form a bigger party, a party that is more national in character and in face, because they would then feel that they're going to lose their positions.
All right.
So I think the law probably, the reasoning behind the law might be that we want to encourage mergers, we want to encourage political parties to come together and form bigger parties. And so to encourage elected representatives to join these mergers willingly, we are going to let them retain their seats.
So James, just to wrap it up now, we've looked at the historical developments of coalitions in Kenya. And now we are at 2022. The elections are around the corner, and now we'll just pick 2 political outfits. I know there's others like Jama, and then but now we're here, and let's just take 2. There's Kenya Kwanza and there's Azimio. Kenya Kwanza is the classic coalition according to the law, And now there's Azimio, which is a new political outfit, which is neither a coalition or a merger, just somewhere in between. So what should the voter expect on the ballot?
For the coalition, that's Kenya Kwanza, I think it's fairly simple. Kenyans have experienced this, in fact, in the previous 2 elections. The candidates will run on the tickets of their individual parties.
Including the president?
Including the presidential candidates. So if you remember, for instance, in 2013, you had the president, the current president, and the deputy president running in a coalition that they call Jubilee Coalition. But the presidential ballot paper showed the party fielding the presidential candidate as TNA. And even though the deputy was a URP member, what the IBC chose to do was we pick the presidential candidate, we use his party as the party of both.
Okay.
And the same with Raila Odinga in both elections, 2013, 2017, when he was in CORD and then NASA, and had a Wiper running mate.
Yeah.
But the ballot paper showed ODM. Now that's going to be a bit different here. For Kenya Kwanza, again, even within their coalition, both the presidential candidate and the running mate are in UDA, sorry.
They belong to one party.
So that's easy. It's going to be UDA, Ruto and Rigathi. For Azimio, because it's a coalition political party, the presidential candidate is going to run on the coalition political party ticket.
Which is
so
Azimio.
You're going to have Azimio as the party of the presidential candidate and his running mate. And while we know the presidential candidate is a member of ODM as an individual party, and the running mate is a member of NARC Kenya. So this could be done for other positions as well, but it seems so far that within Azimio, they have chosen to have the individual political parties field candidates for the other positions. And in fact, in some places, they compete against each other. So you would have a governor candidate from one party within Azimio running against another governor candidate from a different party within Azimio. And the same thing with Kenya Kwanza, really. It's possible to have a UDA candidate running against a Ford Kenya candidate. Or have a UDA candidate running against an ANC candidate.
It's not part of the agreement to not compete.
So within the coalitions, then they try to limit competition. I think what they look at is where they think it's really their stronghold and any of their candidates can win, then they let as many of their political parties as possible field candidates, and then the best one gets elected. But where they feel it's possible that fielding 2 candidates would limit their chances of winning, what both sides are trying to do is either through consensus to try to get some to drop out in favor of others. You've probably seen it in both Nairobi and if I could give an example of Kenya Kwanza in Kakamega County, where Boni Halwale of UDA was running for governor against Cleophas Malala who came in through ANC. And what they did is they had a conversation, and then Boni Halwale agreed to run for senator instead. So now they have one candidate as a coalition, but running on an ANC ticket for governor. And then another individual candidate, just one, Boni Halwale, running as an ANC candidate.
Moving the limelight from the political parties, from the people running for elections to the voter.
Yes.
Don't you think it's unfair if a party can front both the candidates under the coalition political party and under the specific party, just to make it, just to break it down? You said that for Azimio, the presidential candidate will be under Azimio, but the others will be under their specific political parties. But the law allows them to run under an Azimio ticket instead of the specific parties. So as a voter, if I go to the ballot and the person has been chosen, has been indicated Azimio, yet they belong to another party, and then something happens to that coalition somewhere after elections, this person will belong to their specific political party, right?
Yes. Which
I was probably not aware of as a voter if I didn't attend the campaign rallies. Don't you think that is unfair?
I think you have to look at it both ways. And the basic premise would be that you would assume that first most importantly, voters vote for an individual, regardless of the political formation he belongs to. Obviously, there are voters who vote for political parties and formations.
But
You know, it's the same individual you elected, and when you elected him, he was still a member of that party, and he was also a member of that coalition political party by virtue of being a member of that political party. So, in a sense, it's assumed, it should be assumed probably, reasonably, that you would be aware of, you know, someone you have taken a keen interest in and you are voting for, that you would know, you know, where he comes from and how he presents himself. But I can understand, you know, because of the nature of our politics and the fact that a lot of people tend to vote based on the presidential candidate, in fact. So if you're voting for a presidential candidate, this thing they call six-piece voting.
Suiting.
If you, if you vote based on that, then you're probably going to vote for someone you would not have voted for if you had more information about. But I think the bigger problem is how people vote, as opposed to the law. Because if people voted for the right motivations, then that problem you foresee would not exist in the first place.
You had it, viewers. As a voter, you are expected to have the right information. You're expected to know which parties your candidates, which parties are fronting your candidates, what their ideologies are. Because as you see, if anything happens to these coalitions, you're going to be stuck with your party. Thank you so much, James, for coming to this broadcast. If people have more questions on this topic, how should they reach you?
You can reach me through the law firm where I work, Munyao Mudhaman Kashindi Advocates. We are located at AEA Plaza on 6th floor.
If you need to reach us, you can write to us through info@cyroglobal.com. That's info@cyroglobal.com, or on our old Gmail address, which is cyrolowglobal@gmail.com. Before we close our broadcast, we would like to say thank you to Mushiri Frames, who is our videography crew, and to Igeri and Goge Advocates, who are the law firm that have facilitated this election law series. Thank you so much for watching. Share wide, subscribe to our channel. Bye-bye.